Our next speaker has the ever important before lunch slot. So I'm sure what she has to say is going to be fascinating. Mary Lynn Bergstrom is currently the head of the University of California, San Diego Science and Engineering Library, where she provides leadership and overall management of daily operations of a large science and engineering library. Responsibilities in her position include the development, implementation, and assessment of service and resources to support faculty, teaching, and research programs of the Division of Physical Science, the Jacobs School of Engineering, and associated campus research centers and institutes, such as the San Diego Supercomputer Center and the California Institute for Telecommunication and Information Technology. The title of Mary Lynn's presentation is Open Wide, Say Ah! 4 years of reconfiguring the UC San Diego Science and Engineering Library. Mary Lynn?
Okay. Thanks very much, and I appreciate the introduction. As Andrea has pointed out, I do have the primo spot of being between you and your lunch, and so I'm sure you'll all be just as interested as Andrea is in me managing my time effectively. Let me know if I fade out here. I'm not a wanderer. I'm not good at that thing, but I am a light pen user here. And I do want to appreciate and acknowledge the hard work that Andrea and Barbara and everyone behind the scenes has done in organizing this symposium. You have to know that when something looks this good on the front end, there's a huge amount of work that goes into making it happen. And I, as one of the speakers, just really have appreciated that. All right, the title as it appears in your program says Open Wide, Say Ah, but it's in all caps, so you could read it as Say Ah, but that wasn't the intent. I didn't realize how it would look in print in a program. And so when I was thinking about the planning process in general and what we've accomplished in that concept of openness, what came to mind was a haiku about planning. So I created this haiku, and it speaks to the, shall I read it? Can you all see it? I'll read it. Library spaces take shape. In spring we planned. Listen, they're learning. So a haiku is a very delicate arrangement of elements, and the end result captures a sense of place, a sense of time. There's supposed to be a seasonal reference. And these students are obviously displaying all the behaviors that we've talked about all morning, how they move furniture, all of them, everywhere, even in San Diego. They're busily moving furniture right now. Next slide. The library that I work in, the Science and Engineering Library, is one of 9 campus libraries, the University of California, San Diego. How many of you have been on that campus? Not very many. Okay, I'll give you a little profile. Joe has, I know. A little profile. There are 9 campus libraries. There's a biomedical library and a medical center library. The medical center library is located downtown at our teaching hospital, at one of our teaching hospitals. The medical center, the biomedical library is on the medical school campus, which is a 12, 15-minute walk from this library. The Geisel building houses 4 libraries, the Arts Library, the Science and Engineering Library, the Social Sciences Library, and the Mandeville Special Collections Library. In addition, outside of the Geisel building, there's the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. It's down by the ocean. It's a beautiful library. The International Relations and Pacific Studies Library, a somewhat smaller graduate-oriented library, and CLICS, which is the Center for Learning and Information Resources, something like that. It's a reconfigured undergraduate studies library. It's largely computer-based, very little collection there. And did I get all 9 of them? I hope I did, or I'm going to be in trouble. Yeah, I did. Okay, so 4 of us live in one building, and so one of the challenges, as you can imagine, is this creating a sense of identity, creating a sense of visibility within that building. How do you know that you're in one library versus another one? So just before we start, I'll give you a little architectural background, because we are probably one of the only library buildings that is also the campus logo. This is the Geisel building, and it is the campus logo. It is on everything. The chancellor wears it on her T-shirt. I don't know. This was designed and built, it was opened in 1970, it was built in the late 60s. The campus was opened in 1960, so it was a latecomer, and it was the Central University Library, this tower. There was an addition built. This is a light well from that addition. The additional was built below grade. It's not visible. There are two wings in the addition, a west wing and an east wing. The Science and Engineering Library occupies the east wing. It's 2 levels, both below grade. There's light pulled all the way down with this series of light wells that's very artistically configured around the edges. So the architect of the main tower is William Pereira, and his style, and this is an iconic version of his style, is the brutalist style. Lots of concrete. Think about everything we heard about concrete and power. It's all true. So there's a lot of concrete in this building. It's concrete and glass. It was named in 1995 the Geisel Library in honor and in recognition of the contributions of Theodore Geisel, Dr. Seuss, and Audrey Geisel, his wife, who is still alive and well and comes every year to celebrate his birthday with us. But that wasn't until 1995. Go ahead. So this is the entrance. You walk down across a small bridge. The tower stands here, but here you can see the wings. Those go down into the ground. They pull light down in. And it says Geisel Library. It doesn't say Arts Library, Social Sciences Library, Science and Engineering. This is just a reminder of the challenge of establishing visibility. Okay, go ahead. And this is the entrance. There's a lot of campus art, public art on campus. It's called the Stewart Collection, and the entrance to the library just happens to be a Stewart Collection installation. The slogan over the door is Read, Write, Think, Dream, and this is a graphic creation by an artist, John Baldessari, who came to campus and photographed, and this is a photographic etching process. They're actual students the year he came, and these are actual library books that the library staff collected and put up there for his use. So you walk into this gracious lobby, and you can leave it right there for a moment. And the Science and Engineering Library is the east wing, 2 floors. We have 42,900 assignable square feet. I have a staff of 15, 6 librarians and 9 other staff. We provide a full range of public services, interlibrary loan, reserve, circulation, instruction, outreach, and reference. And we, at the year that this description of these projects began, we had a collection on site of 274,000 volumes, and we had 660 user seats. We had 4 group study rooms, 1 ADA equipped room. So we had 5 rooms, but one of those was restricted access for ADA compliance. So go ahead. Oh, all photographs are not created equal. This is pretty bad. Can you go to the next one? It all started with the airplanes for me. When I started at the library, I was approached by a faculty member from the Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering Department, and he reminded me of an ongoing request of his that we hang airplanes in our library. And his conversation with me indicated that the faculty viewed the library as the place, the Science and Engineering Library, as the place where science and engineering students could come together in a way that they could not on any other place on campus. They had classrooms. It's a huge campus. There's 30,000 undergrads. They had classroom space. There was no space in the departments for them to interact as science and engineering students. And his feeling was that student work, student-built work, would inspire science and engineering students to understand what lay ahead, what was possible, what they could create, what they could build, what it meant to be a scientist. And he had some airplanes that he didn't want anymore in his department. So he's a very active participant in this annual competition, and he had 6 of these that he wanted hung. The hanging the airplanes, I won't even go into the details. Nevertheless, they're hung, and we replace them every year when he has a winning competitor. So there are 6 of these. We have 2 stairwells. We have 3 in each stairwell. That was a statement, and it was the beginning of thinking about the identity as something important to say. We're the Science and Engineering Library. You're in a different space now. You're not just in Geisel. So go ahead. The next contributor to this identity theme was the logo. We had, what you can't see here, but you will later on, is there's a little sine curve that is very graceful. It unifies the the S and the E there. We had a strategic planning session. One of our staff members, very creative, and this is about openness to staff creativity also. One of our staff members created this logo. She was an administrative assistant. It was the most beautiful thing that we were just stunned. I mean, you can pay a lot. You can go through a series of branding exercises and not come up with something that really quite captures it so gracefully. So it's something we use all the time. I'm going to hold up objects, which hopefully the camera will see. You won't be able to see them. Every year on our annual pen, we have the logo. This is the black and silver version. We watermark it in all of our reporting. It's on every flyer that goes out. It's on every web page that goes out. It's a little thing on our URL. So this logo is S&E. And we worked with that, even though we hadn't gone through what would have been very helpful formal visioning branding process. So we had our airplanes, we had our logo, we were ready to go. Go ahead. So our first project was a single service desk. We were positioned in a sort of L shape, and you can see it on the next slide. But I'm going to ask you to jump back. Okay, this is the floor plan. There are two entrances. This was the main entrance, and this is an entrance from the lobby. The service desk was here, the circ desk. It faced this way, and it blocked out, and it had a wall here, okay? And the reference desk is back here, so there's no sightline connection between them. The reference desk was a sit-down desk. It was very low. It was in the middle of a very crowded student area, not very visible. The circ desk, you walked past it, and it disappeared because there was a wall. You couldn't remember there was a desk there. So we did a survey of our users and found out that they went to the desk they were closest to if they had a question. They didn't make a distinction between circ, reference, and so they weren't getting particularly good service necessarily, and they weren't getting a very efficient response to their service needs by having these two desks separated. And it required staffing at both desks, so it wasn't in the best and most efficient use of the staffing. The funding source for combining these into a single service desk came from a long-standing request by my predecessor for a full-on, full-scale architectural reconfiguration of the entire library. And that had been put forward, and in fact, the libraries, the UCSD libraries did, up until this year, invest $500,000 every year to an annual major renovation fund. Obviously, we're not with California budget. Let's see now. There's a connection. We're not doing that this year, but up until then, we had about 15 projects a year that were put up against that, and they were prioritized, and some of them were not funded at all. In our case, we were funded to a small degree to do the single service desk, not to do the entire reconfiguration of the space. So we began the process. We developed teams. We had facilitated sessions, and again, in the concept of openness, the person who facilitated them was the head of our facilities head. Okay, this is a guy you never see out of the basement. And it turns out he's the most charming, well, I knew he was charming, but not everybody on my staff did. He's charming, an incredibly effective facilitator, stone deaf. So we had to accommodate for a hearing loss that made the sessions very interesting. You had to slow down. You had to have a translator. It was just a remarkable performance. He did 3 sessions with us over the course of several months. We set up user teams that focused on, and each team was equipped with graph paper. This was important, and masking tape. So our entire second floor, the main floor, looked like a crime scene. We had masking tape everywhere because everything that was proposed had to be scoped out and sketched out and put on the floor so everyone else could see it and comment on it. It was a very inclusive process. The staff really got engaged. There were a lot of disagreements. There was some agreement, and we moved forward. The teams addressed the single service desk. We had to do retraining. We had to identify desk competencies, and we had to move some collections. The reference collection had been back here, close to the desk. We had to move it up here, close to the new desk. Some reconfigurations like that of collections, as well as this new service model. And in addition, we had to rethink our group study rooms. One thing that we did in the process of reconfiguring the study rooms was we recaptured a couple that had been devoted to older technologies. We had a photocopy room, the set-aside room with 4 photocopy machines, because they were big and they were noisy and they were heavily used, less so as time went on. And we had a microfiche reader room that was also not very heavily used, separate room. Okay, so we moved ahead. If you can see the slide. Yeah. No, go ahead, sorry. I lied about going back. So this is the desk. Again, sorry about the bad photo. Sometimes they change when they're... it's very angular. It's very high level. It has a little angle that goes in. It's not wood. All of the other desks in the library are this oak, flat, old-fashioned looking. It's very modern looking, sophisticated, sleek. It's very modular. It could be moved tomorrow. They might be moving it now, for all I know. We did make a distinction because my staff wanted it to be clear. You go to this side for reference, you go to this side for circ, and it's like the side is very clearly divided. That's fine. This is opening day, so there's balloons. We don't always have balloons. Go ahead. We did start to put our own personality out there on the desk as soon as it opened. We have candy. We have a little candy dish by the reference side, and during finals week it has chocolate in it instead of just plain candy. So that's a tradition. We have a little, this was an innovation of one of two staff from the back room said, we've got to start recycling batteries. So we have this miniature, this is not a full size, it's this little tiny recycle bin. It's the cutest thing ever. And the students drop off their batteries there and we recycle them. So the desk is a real hub of activity and that's really worked well. Go ahead. So this is how it looks now. You come in here, the service desk is low, it's open on three sides. You could see it was sort of like a prow. So light comes through. This is a wall of windows, so light coming across here makes a big difference. It's not as long in the back, so light comes through here as well. This was a photocopy room, so now we have an additional group study room instead. Let's see what else I was talking about. This was the microfiche reader room, and we now have a group study room added there as well. These two group study rooms were simply built. It's relatively cheap to build flat-out walls with not a whole lot of technology in them. So those are just group study rooms. So let's go to the next slide. So here's the one with no door. And it was a microfiche. Here's the microfiche reader. You notice nobody's sitting at it, but there's a lot of people sitting in this room. And it's just out in the middle. It's not very far away from a huge number of other students doing other things, but it's very heavily used. We, of our 6-7 group study rooms, we allow 2 of them to be reserved, and the rest of them are first come, first serve. Obviously, the one with no door is first come, first serve. Go on to the next, please. So here's one of the ones that's just a more standard. It has a whiteboard. They're very simple. They have a whiteboard, a table, a bunch of chairs. That's it. One thing that was a huge triumph for us is there's color on the wall. I mentioned this was built in the 1970s. It's a concrete building. The color scheme was white and concrete. That was it. And that was not just trivial. You couldn't get it painted. You could not get color painted. It was not authorized. So to have color in these rooms represents a political triumph of a scale that you can't even imagine. We have different colors in each of the rooms, and it's like huge. So that was a staff initiative. They came to me. They said, we got to make these color. It's really important to us, and they are. So go ahead. This is the presentation practice room. It's a very small scale, very simple compared to what you've been hearing described from other folks this morning. Has a projector in the ceiling and a small computer in the back, but they mostly use their own laptops. I wish this was brighter because you can see this guy's pork pie hat. He's so cute. And it's available for reservation, so it's a presentation practice room that is one of the group study rooms. It's often used just for group study. Go ahead. Staff creativity, again, that openness to staff creativity. When we were having our desk warming, when it was one of my administrative assistant at the time came up with these little teeny tiny miniature invitations, and instead of mailing out a flyer or sending out an email, she created these little invitations and filled gift bags with candy and little teeny invitations and delivered them hand to each library department on the whole campus. It was charming. And so being open to that kind of ability of letting your staff do what they do well surprises you often. You find out that they just have this wonderful ability and that brings staff cohesion together. So go ahead. So we had our desk warming, and we had a little self-guided tour. Not very complicated. It's just one floor, but we had a flyer with the little footsteps, and this is our main entrance. Okay, now in this main entrance, you'll notice a couple other things. Go ahead. We started building a real identity in our lobby entrance, and this whole question of identity and visibility that had come out in every single session we had facilitated session with the staff was starting to reflect what the student interests might be as well. The students know they're in a different place. When they walk in, they see a browsing collection, and it's science books. It's not browsing like a rented McNaughton collection or something. It's the 10 most beautiful science experiments. It's the science of superheroes. It's the physics of skiing. It's all those geeky, quirky books that you see in bookstores, and you wouldn't add to your collection because they're not serious science, but they're fun science. So we have a browsing collection of that kind of materials in the front, in the lobby area. Go ahead. And we have another librarian's initiative, which was to do a left side, right side brain thing, and to encourage them to play. These are largely engineering students, after all, and so playing is important. They build. We have a Jenga set. We have an erector set. We have Legos, bins of Legos. Somebody's son moved away to college, and she scooped up all his Legos. I think he probably hates his mother now because it was like a lot of Legos. So we have puzzles, we have the Legos. Go ahead. And we've set up a special area. This is a special little area rug from, I believe, IKEA, a very low budget, to say, here's a special area. When you're sitting here, you're in a different kind of place. Think differently, relax, play, get a game, and go ahead. We have a chess table. That was a donation of one of our friends of the library. Folks actually built it. It's quite a gorgeous piece, and they play chess on it often. So here's a student doing what we want them to do, or what they seem to want to do, because we're not in the business of telling them what they're supposed to do. Here's his little Legos. He's playing. He's had fun. He's having a little game going on there, but he's really studying. So he's doing what a good engineering student, or maybe any student, would be doing. Go ahead. And in our latest iteration of this, and some of you may have seen this in Library Journal, when we had a graduate come back who's maintained a connection with the library. When he graduated, he founded with a bunch of his buddies Presto Studios, which was a video gaming company. They did the Journeyman project. This is from Journeyman 3. It's a time travel suit. So we have a time travel suit. It's a development opportunity because he's a successful entrepreneur. On the other hand, he's a charming alumni graduate, and he's an example of what creative and wonderful things you can do if you think openly about what's possible. So here's our jumpsuit. Permanent installation in the lobby. So another thing you see when you come in. Okay, the following year. The instruction and events room. The events room was a particularly interesting negotiation, and when you're approached by your library administration and asked to give up space, the proposal was they build a space about the size of this room and occupy it for a whole year with a part of the library staff from the biomedical library when it was being renovated. So I had to divest ourselves of some collections. Well, that was okay. Move some carrels. That was okay. And have this space built out in the Science and Engineering Library, occupied by the Interlibrary Loan Unit from the Biomedical Library for a year. And then they would give it back. Okay, so it's like, oh, really? Good. I'm really hoping that you do give it back. But in fact, they took the building cost of that space, about $75,000, came out of the Biomedical Library Renovation Fund, not my funds, and was put into creating a space which then became, in fact, in a year, Science and Engineering Library space. So we ended up with the events room, and that was really remarkable. Go ahead. We also built an instruction room. We reclaimed some space that had been occupied by the bioinformatics department for a graduate student lab with some equipment that wasn't really being used, and it was a key-coded room just for that group. It wasn't being used at all, so we had to negotiate to ask them to please go away with their equipment, and that was a little bit tricky, but it went all right. And so we got funding for the 12 PCs. It's just a very simple room. We left room for laptops at the end of each of the aisles. Here is laptop space. It's relatively easily flexible configuration in that room. Go ahead. So that's our instruction room. And this is our events room. It's about the size of this room. It has glass in the back from one of the light wells. These are tables on wheels. These are chairs on wheels. The chairs are those nesting ones, so you don't have to lift them. You just push them together and push them around. they're a wonderful thing. And the little tables can be reconfigured. We have yoga classes in this space twice a week. The custodial staff use it for stretching exercises in the very early morning hours. So imagine it filled with people doing relaxing, stretching things. We have all sorts of meetings. There are only 2 large meeting rooms in the entire Geisel building, and this has become one of the more desirable ones. We do programming there. We have a series of nano-engineering department faculty lectures that we've been running this quarter. We had the fellow who designed the jumpsuit come and give a lecture to students on his new venture, which is iPhone apps. So imagine this room filled with people who are eager to hear about the new adventures and discoveries that people are doing. I envy you your screen. You notice we're a little lame in the screen department here. What my next little programming thing is just to have a science fiction film festival in here. I would love to be able to do that. So it's being heavily used for programming at this point, and it was really done very effectively in terms of the budgeting. Go ahead. I'm trying to keep up here. Okay, the Open Doors Project. Go ahead. We had a controlled circulation within the building. And it's very funny. We had our own circ desk. We had our own magnetic gates. The gates would go off if you came in from the rest of the library with a book that you had not checked out yet. You can imagine how often that happened. The gates would go off. And at any rate, it was a very hostile kind of barrier kind of experience. But it was important to my staff to maintain control of our collection. Go ahead. And at this side of this is the lobby view of the entrance to the Science and Engineering Library. Imagine that these graphics are not there. It's just a white wall, and there's a grate. Can you see the grate? I'm really sorry this photograph is so dark because it's really not dark on my computer. The grate was pulled down all the time. It was a barrier. It was because it was important to the staff to control the collection, and so the grate was down. So new AUL comes in and says, what's it going to take to get that grate up? So it's going to take a personality transplant of your entire staff, but hey, other than that, we'll do it. So we worked really hard. We talked about the issues. We talked about the collection. We talked about what openness meant and what was important. And again, that issue of identity came to the fore. It was like we want them to know, no matter which entrance they go in, that they're going into science and engineering. So, and again, creative staff. This graphic was a proposal for some stencil signage. It's flat signage painted on the wall, and you can see there's our logo. And it was a proposal that 2 of my circ staff guys came up with and created this incredible array of Photoshop options and said, this is what we want to do. We want it to be distinct. We want people to know they're in S&E. So we didn't put Einstein up. It's too bad, but go ahead. But we did put the logo up. We have a little display case there, and it's open. So when you walk into the lobby, this is on your immediate right hand, and that's what you see. Go ahead. And this is the other entrance, the main entrance. And again, we have the stencil signage on the wall. Again, we have our logo. We have it, it's very visible. It's very inviting. And this entrance, go ahead, is now open. There aren't a whole bunch of circ gates there. You just walk right in. So our students are responding. We put a display case out there, and our students are giving us all manner of funky. They give these prizes. They're engineers. So these are like laser pens. This is the Golden Frisbee. It's a highly coveted award that's given once a year to, I'm not quite sure who, but we keep it, and we are the place that they go to see the competitive balsa wood seismically stable tower that won the competition. So we are becoming that place where students share their work, students are inspired by each other, and they expect us to house this stuff. Go ahead, which is really cool. Okay, collection split, go ahead. Downstairs, as you'll recall, this is actually the downstairs. I showed it first as the upstairs. It was this huge monolith of collections. We had 274,000 volumes on site. And it was an integrated collection. Books and journals were shelved together. They were, classified but shelved together. One long-standing goal had been to divide the collection by format, to have journals and monographs shelved separately because they're used differently. And another long-standing goal had been to weed it down to a little bit trimmer collection that reflected, higher use materials on site. We have the privilege of having a local annex for off-site storage, and in addition, because we're the University of California, we have 2, not 1, but 2 facilities for storage that all the campuses use. So material is very easily retrieved from either the local annex or the regional library facility. So having this humongous and somewhat low-use on-site collection, it made sense to address that and to weed it down and to split. So incentive, the catalyst behind this one was, here's my events room, okay? I was approached because they were renovating the west wing of the library to put in an addition to reconfigure the arts library, and they needed to relocate the preservation unit that was then housed in that area, and they needed to relocate it. They come and they say, we'd like to take back the events room and reuse it for 2 years this time for the preservation staff. And I said, we're using it for programming. It's heavily used. It's actually our space now, so I'm a little reluctant to give it back. To stop the faculty lectures, et cetera. So there's a negotiation, there's discussion, they're really looking for space, there's a real pressure point. I'm really anxious to get my collection weeded. And so this space kind of just starts to jump out because it's isolated from the rest of the collection, it's close to the elevator, it's close to the tunnel that goes to the rest of the building. And one thing and another we say, all right, what if we let you build the preservation space in this area instead? And administration approves that, and it becomes an edict. Go ahead. So we go ahead and weed, and this is now the preservation unit. And one more shot. They put power all along the walls. It's kind of a funky configuration, but it's power because coring the floor is expensive. So we have additional user space along here. We weeded the collection, and because we were such good citizens, facilities agreed to separate the collection the same summer, which we hadn't actually anticipated. This is a small budget, small in the sense of $100,000. Each volume in the collection had to be handled between 3 and 4 times. So his estimate is they handled them something like 800,000 volumes per moving it. We had to create swing space to extricate the journals and the monographs. So we did the weeding and the split within the course of from February till the end of the summer. It was and as Mike, the facilities guys, points out to me, he said, you don't even know the behind the scenes on this. There were 6 funding sources for that $100,000. I go, you're right, I don't know, and I don't even want to know, so so go ahead. So this is the collection split, purple shelves. You can't see exactly, but those are purple shelf panels. That's the journals. The red shelves are the monos. It's a little queue. It helps us create signage that helps the users find their way. Go ahead. And these are the little alcoves. We use the shelving itself as the architectural divider to create these little study alcoves. Power is going to be added along here in the summer. Some of it's already in place, but they're using the spaces. This is what it looks like when there is power. The students don't care. This is down on the ground floor. You can tell because there's no carpet. It's linoleum. And our students are everywhere there's power, they are working. Go ahead. These are the carols along the light well. This is the bottom of the light well on the ground floor. And those are live plants. And I've often thought we should get like iguanas or something in there too. It would be so neat. And so all of these carols are wired. They use those heavily. Go ahead. And so last but not least, and I will try to wrap this up quickly, go ahead, is the info commons. We have an installation of academic computing services equipment, 46 6 Macs and 40 PCs, 3 printers, 2 black and white, 1 color. It's been there since the dawn of time. It's a computer lab on site in the library, but the library didn't manage it or wasn't associated with the academic computing service people. It was just there. So as you can see, this is not a made-up picture. These people are there all the time. These are really heavily used computers. We gave no support to it. But obviously, since they're in our space, we get a lot of questions at the desk about software, about printer malfunctions, about managing ACS accounts, et cetera. And it was just as much of a barrier as having those darn gates up. It was because we would say, I don't know, pick up the phone. There's a hotline phone in Lab A. Go ahead and ask. Here's Lab A. That's more of the ACS equipment. Go ahead. So we did a pilot proposal for funding, $20,000 to train up students. This took about a year of negotiating a service level agreement with academic computing. I was not involved. It was up at the upper levels. I put forward the proposal and drafted it, but of course so-and-so has to talk to so-and-so. So it took quite a long time, but eventually it was the service level agreement was reached. because academic computing owns the equipment and we were providing the staff, so there had to be agreements on who trained who and who talked to who and what situations they would respond to, etc. So that was put in place. As you can see, we went kind of low budget and funky on the furniture. This was bought from surplus sales, and it's a very old oak wooden desk and a little whiteboard there. But Academic Computing Services, once they got engaged in this project, got very supportive. They gave us this equipment, that's their Big Mac, and they send down their student workers, the zebras they're called, for the evening shifts. Completely unanticipated, remarkably successful collaboration. Go ahead. So here's the service desk with one of our guys, that's Jake. And again, staff step in and surprise you. The InfoCommons team of my staff built this whole brand. It's called the InfoCommons. The tagline is anything but common. They trained the staff. They make them wear badges with their picture and their name. We don't do that with any of our other student workers. And it's a time-limited project because the funding was a one-time funding source. And so we'll have to report on it and see if we can move this forward. At this point, it's unclear, but we've certainly enjoyed doing it. Go ahead. And as I said, and I'll just remind you, this is the theme about you open your library, you invite students in, you try to create an identity, and darned if they don't come to you and say, oh, we just competed in the steel bridge competition. Would you like the bridge? We'd say, so sure, there's the bridge, and here's the Junkyard Derby winning vehicle. I'm sure you can tell it's a winner. The Junkyard Derby, they plunge down this hill that goes right outside the library, and if they don't crash and die, they win. And so these guys won, and it was right beside the browsing collection for most of the year, and it's very exciting. There's another one coming up, so now we have to figure out what do we do with this. But anyway, they know, when they walk into S&E, they know they're in a special place, and they're in a place that talks about science, it talks about building, it talks about creativity, it talks about making connections with information and resources. And we also have fun when we did the Science of Superheroes exhibit. We had a little take your picture with Spidey, go ahead. And we every year do, of course, Einstein's Birthday and take your picture with Einstein. Totally hokey, they love it. We get it, in an hour, we take like hundreds of pictures and put them up on a Flickr stream, and that's it. A bunch of balloons, that's all it costs in an hour time. It's a fun event. Go ahead. So our students come in our space, they're comfortable in our space, they know they're in a distinctive space, and go ahead. And that's the end of my proposal.
We can take one question before lunch. How do you get power to places when you take the shelves down and you're out in the middle and you want to provide power?
Oh, I meant to point that out when I showed the InfoCommons installation. There's some power poles, and that works well on the main floor, the second floor, downstairs where you are totally concrete and you've got a concrete floor above you. That power is a huge challenge and it's a real expense. So in a low budget time, ordinarily I'd be requesting floor coring of $20,000, $50,000 every year. I'm not going to be able to request that for the next 4 or 5 years. I keep thinking these students are sitting there, they're so smart, why don't they invent the necessary hydrogen cell powered thing? Why do they live with these cords all over the place? But it's a really good question, and it's a real challenge of our particular facility. And I think we've heard it's a challenge of other facilities as well.
Thank you again, Mary Lynn.
You are welcome.